Welcome back, everybody. If you caught the last video a couple days ago, you know today we're going to be installing my buddy's Corsa Extreme catback on his 2019 Mustang. So I figured what better way to start the video off than firing this one up in the garage. It's not Corsa, but it's AWE. Got a couple videos, you can go back, check that out. And if you want to hear his Corsa once it's done, we're going to do a full review. You'll hear a couple clips on here once we got it installed. But if you want the full review, make sure you thumbs up, subscribe, so you don't miss that video coming up in the future. And yeah, today we'll be installing it, so let's roll the windows down a little bit. We're in the garage, so it should sound pretty good. And we'll get going here. Car's in here, we got her all jacked up, ready to go. While we wait, because he did drive here, the exhaust is a little hot, so we'll wait for it to cool off. We're gonna get the active exhaust tips bolted on. It's easier to do while it's on the ground, you can see what you're doing. Clamp wise, comes with 6 of these clamps. That's to bolt the actual pipes together. And then you have these, I forget what they're called, but they got the little groove here in the middle. You got 2 of those, that's for the active, because when you bolt this, you can see it's got that little lip there. When it goes on here, you can see you got the lip. That'll be tight once I get it on there. And then basically the 2 lips sit in that little groove, and when you tighten her down, it holds it tight. The one thing you gotta know, you got your passenger side, driver's side. The active parts go towards the center of the car, and if you look at these, that lip goes that way. If you flip this one, you can see it's the opposite way. So basically, Corsa will be straight when you have it. You see how it leans one way? You want it leaning towards the outside of the car. So this is your driver's side, because it'll lean towards the outside, which is your normal pipe here, or your normal tip. And then you see this one, when you got her straight, leans the opposite way, so you know it's that side. Basically the way the active works, while we have this off the car, I'll try to show you. If you bring it up, you can see your regular side, you go through the little mesh, it's actually through the muffler, all that. Then your other side, it's kind of dark, but you're basically just a straight pipe right through the muffler. That'd be your track sport side, most likely. So if you're curious of what the inside looks like, she's not too bad. Alright, you can see that's how she'll sit once it's on. Just try to get your tips as straight as you can to start. You can readjust it later on once it's on the car. But at least you got this bolted on. It's a little before the clamp. You can see it's nice and tight. Basically this, I have that one set up to tighten from the top, a little easier to reach. So this one, once it goes on, we'll probably do it that way, same thing. One thing you gotta do, just open it. You don't break it, just spread it open a tiny bit. It's easier to get around there. Tighten her down, you're good to go. Alright, so it's a little tight under the car, so I'll just give a quick rundown from the back. Basically, you have your 2 clamps here. That's a 13 mil bolt. It's this one, there, and there. Loosen that off. You can take them out because those actually hang in there. That's just to stop it from vibrating off when you're driving. So you can take those off first, make your life a little easier. And then way down there, past the resonator in the middle, because this catback is all one piece with these cars. You can see the bolts right there. That's 15 mil. Just loosen that. And then the other thing up here, if you come in, you can see you got another clamp here, and then your harness for the MagneRide is actually this. We'll unclip it from the other side. I can show you that in a minute. But if you got a helper, you don't have to take these off. If you do it yourself, like I did mine, I ended up taking this off. It's just easier to drop it. And what I did is I put a bucket under the middle there, and then I had a bucket on this side and a bucket on that side, and basically just pull it this way. That'll drop down on the bucket, just stops it from smashing into the concrete and keeps it up a little bit, makes it easier to get this off. And then I just put my foot against each side of the muffler, gave it a little kick. This side pops off enough, or I undid the clamp so it got it out enough to clear here, and then drop it onto those two buckets and you're good to go. Slide it out. If you got an extra hand, one guy can hold that side, help you pull, and it should come out pretty easily. Alright, so before you drop it, you can see that wires your active exhaust. Basically this is your clip here. You got this little push tab, just squeeze it in. If I can get my hand in there right. And she pulls right off. That's the little tab I was talking about. Just push on that and it comes right out. And then basically you have your one plug in the side, goes into the body here. Same kind of clip as that little one there, the little Christmas tree clip. So if you got a clip removal tool, just get it behind there and pull. Otherwise get a screwdriver, a pair of pliers or something, just wiggle it a little bit, it'll come out. And then you're all set to drop the exhaust. Alright, exhaust is out. You can see it's clamped here, and then one little piece there. This is on the actual rubber clamp or bracket that holds on to the bar here. That goes into the body. So what we need to do, take these three out of each side, and you got one more clamp here, and then that all moves over to the new one. Just do one at a time, passenger side, driver's side, so you don't mix it up. And then we can start getting her back together under there. Okay, we got the harness off. You can see it's just a little spring under there. That locks on to the space there. And when you start this up, when your car's off, apparently the active exhaust is all the way open. So if you look in here, make sure you're all the way open before you put this on. Otherwise your active exhaust will be backwards when you fire up the car. And basically that will just sit on there like that. You might have to wiggle it a little bit to get the spring to sit in there right. And then this little clamp, once it's in there like so, that clamp is on the outermost bolt just to hold your wiring in place. You do it on this side, do the same on the passenger side, and then you should be okay to go put her back in. Alright, so I took the spring off just to show you guys how it sits in there. What you want to have it do is sit just like that. You can see there's two little notches. You get that little hump there in the middle. That way when the motor turns, you can see this turns back and forth. So if I get that, you look in here, when I turn it, she opens and closes. So you want it open, which is that way. And then basically you get your little motor here. You got the space there too. We'll clamp right on the longer spot right here, and then kind of locks it in between this piece and there. And then when your motor's open and closing, your active should work. Alright, so you can see we got this clamped on. Basically those are the three bolts you get from Corsa. This side, which is the driver's side, you get this fat bump here facing outwards. Obviously when you come to this side, you get the bump facing towards your muffler. The one thing I noticed is because you get this clamp, which I didn't put on this side yet, when you clamp it on that bolt, the bottom actually touches the tip. So once it's all said and done, you get this all clamped back in, plug your harness back in. You probably want to bend that up a little bit just so it's not rattling on your tip. Alright, one downside, we've been struggling with this forever. The motor on the old system sat that way. As you can see, the tip goes this way. That's why that clamp is hitting the tip here. And then when it's sitting this way, the wire is too short to clip back in properly. So what I'm thinking we have to do is probably cut all the tape off and just try to get it to fit as best we can under there. And it's the same on the passenger side as well. It would sit that way. The tip is the wrong way, of course. Alright, so next up under the car, you can see your exhaust has the two little tabs, or whatever that is, the little nipple here. If you look at your clamps that came on the car, one side has the little notch cut out. Basically, that goes on there, stops it from sliding back. You press that back in, and that'll stop it from wiggling around. And then you get your connection, or your little adapter here. That'll get you from your 2-inch to your, or 2.5 inch to your 3-inch. That goes in that side, and you're good to go to put your X-pipe on, which will be the next part. And what I was talking about earlier is Corsa is the only one that I know that sends that, because your connector pipe here all the way back, your cats and your headers and everything, is 2.5. So if you're to get headers at 3-inch, you can just lose that piece eventually and go straight into the 3-inch X pipe. Whereas like my exhaust and other ones I know of, if you don't have that piece there, you actually have to cut the little bottleneck part off of your X pipe or H pipe, whatever you have in the middle, if you want your full 3-inch. And then they send these mid pipes a little bit longer to make up the difference of what you cut off. So we got the adapters in. You can see here that little nipple I was talking about. That's just so you know the clamp is all the way on. And eventually, once you're done, you can just squish that up and that'll hold it. If it ever was to come loose, it stops it from sliding off, basically. Get your adapter in here. Make sure you shove it all the way in. You can see this is where it starts to expand. That way you know it's all the way in. Tighten the bolts a little bit, so 15 mil. You don't have to crank them tight because you want to be able to adjust this later, so just snug enough to hold everything for now until you got all the rest in. Alright, so kind of hard to film under the car, but you can see, make sure you orientate your clamp so that the bolts are down, otherwise you won't be able to tighten it up. You get your X pipe. Basically it slides over that adapter part here. I shoved it up all the way to the weld on both sides, that way you know here is straight, and then it'll make it easier when you try to adjust the muffler part eventually. So that's how that should look. We'll move on to the back. All right, before you put your muffler on here, get your clamp back on the middle. Like I said, you can see it's got the hook on one side. Basically that hooks right up there in the little hole above where the bolt goes back in. So it'll make your life a lot easier. You can just put that on, slide it over, same thing, make sure you orientate your clamps the right way. Slide it over the X pipe, hang it on there, and then you can push back, get that side into the clamp that's up here, and you're ready to adjust it all, tighten it down, and then we'll do the same on the other side. Alright, so we got everything in. If you want to level it on your own, what I do, put a jack under there, jack it up higher than you want it to be, because once it drops it'll settle a bit. You can try to get your tips as straight as you can. So jack it up like that, crank the clamp tight there in the middle, and then once you let it go it should drop straight. Alright, so we got it all back together. The way we solved the issue of the active there, basically we left the one clip, there's one clamp that goes on the hanger bracket there, a little Christmas tree clip. Left that out, and then instead of having it behind this clamp, you can see we have it in front now. So that gives you enough room to get the wires all hooked up and clip back into the one big Christmas tree clip up here that clips into the body. And she should all work. All right, we're done. Let's see how she sounds. Pretty loud. That's sport mode. Quiet mode. Sport. You can see it. Alright, so we're outside. This is a couple days later because we ended up having one issue and we just ran out of time dealing with it for the first day. What it is with the active exhaust, I guess, like I said earlier, that spring that's in there has to be set just right, and I guess we didn't have it in there quite right. So when you start it, it would open and go to your normal mode or quiet mode, whatever you have set, which was fine. But then as you change to like sport, track, and tried to change it, the computer would freak out and the valve was going from quiet to track, and it would just keep going back and forth on its own until you shut off the car and restarted it, and then it would just be set in your normal mode again. So what we ended up having to do is take the motor out of there again and just reset that little spring in there. You just have that tiny little ring, sits in the two little grooves, and there should be quite a bit of pressure. When you put it in, you got to kind of turn it to line it up, and you should have a decent amount of pressure. I guess maybe the sensor or something goes off the amount of pressure that's on the motor before it's turned on. So the one nice thing about the Corsa is because you can take that tip off with the clamp there, we could just take the tip down, unclip the motor, and then the whole thing's out. Instead of, having to drop the whole exhaust again, you can just take that tip off of the one side and that one off the other side. So if you're putting this in and you have that issue, we read online some people were bringing it into Ford to like get it recalibrated and stuff, and it's probably one of those things where they just rip you off. So if it doesn't work and you have some issues, just take it off, play with the motor a couple times, and it'll end up working. And then basically on your dash, when you try to change it, it says exhaust system fault or something. And then you'll hear it. It clicks back and forth, track to normal, track to normal. So just something to keep in mind if you're doing this on your own. Don't freak out. You didn't wreck anything. It's just not set properly in there. All right. Yep. We'll see what it sounds like. Normal mode. It starts in normal. Put it to quiet. You can see it shuts right up. See the valves in there close. Try normal. That's normal, not too bad. And sport. You can see they just open slightly more. Then all the way to track, you can see they'll open all the way. At idle, it's not too bad. Revving it up, you can definitely tell the difference. But I'm gonna back up for that so it doesn't distort the camera. Give a little. Now do it in quiet mode. There you have it. active exhaust works perfectly now. And I'm sure it probably doesn't show it on camera, but track mode is very, very loud. So if you're getting this exhaust without the active and you're worried about too much noise, probably not the exhaust you want to go with, but it does sound really good. So stay tuned for the next videos, because we're probably going to do a whole review on it. We'll get some drive-bys and some video from the inside, maybe compare it to the AWE. I also have, my cousin's got the same Corsa Extreme on his Camaro, so we can test side by side those two differences, and we'll go through all that. So as always, thumbs up, subscribe, and we will catch you in the next video, guys.